Geraint Davies.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In 2010, there were 26,000 people getting food from food banks when the Labour government left. In 2021, that number had risen to 2.6 million. That's a 100 times increase. And that was before the Ukrainian war. And now we see a situation where 1 in 4 children are in food poverty and 1 in 5 adults. As we've heard, 4 million children, 10 million adults in the 6th richest country in the world. This is a catastrophe, and the number of people in food poverty who can't afford to eat nutritious food and are also freezing in their houses is much, much higher than during the pandemic. I'm a member of the Co-operative Party and the Labour Party. We agree with the right to food. There is, of course, a right to life in terms of the UN Charter and in terms of the EU Convention of Human Rights. And obviously, an intrinsic part of having the right to life is the right to food. So I do support initiatives from the Co-op Party like Healthy Start vouchers. And it is very important that these are rolled out and index-linked so they keep up with inflation. But we do need much more. Obviously, the cooperative movement was started by the Rothschild pioneers in terms of stopping adulterated food. It's about food, and everybody should have that, a right to food and daily nutritional food. Winston Churchill, of course, famously said that the most important asset of a country is its health, and its health is predicated on having enough healthy food. And the reality is that people don't have enough money to buy healthy food after taking account of the housing costs and the heating costs that they face. Amartya Sen, who is, of course, a famous Nobel Prize winner, wrote about famines. He was focused on the developing world. But famines, he argued, wasn't about a shortage of food. It was about a conjunction of very high prices hitting low wages in particular communities that led to starvation. And that's what we're on the brink of now seeing in Britain. We've got high prices coming in, yes, from the Ukraine, yes, of course, from a Brexit in terms of the price of imports is going down as the value of sterling has gone down. Obviously, we've got shortages in our own production because, as we've heard from workers, we've had a situation where 1 in 4 of our fruit isn't picked. We've had mass culling of pigs, 40,000 pigs killed. We haven't got enough people to work in abattoirs. So we've got a problem with food production locally. We've got a problem with sterling being further pushed down, driving prices up. So these problems, some of these problems were avoidable and political problems. And alongside those high prices, we've got low wages. So we've had a situation since 2010 where we've had very low growth, pay freezes. And if you compare that with what happened in the previous 10 years under the Labour Party, certainly in the 10 years to 2008 when the economy grew by 40%, the IFS showed that if there was trend growth had continued to now, the average wages would be £10,000 higher. So obviously the country would be much more resilient to external shocks that's now causing this catastrophe of localised famine. So the government does need to act and act quickly and think carefully about how we do manage this new budget coming up. I know there's been this sort of abolition of the national insurance and everyone's thought on the face of it that's a great idea, but the reality is that will give £7.60 back to the lowest 10% and over £1,000 back to the richest 10%. And at a time that we've heard the people on universal credit, half of them are in sort of food poverty, we need to think very carefully how we sustain our people in terms of what is right and what is effective for our nation. We've talked today about the quality of food, and the truth is the people in poverty are often obese because they've got to resort to very low nutrition, high fat, high salt, high sugar products that obviously keep going a long time but aren't particularly good for you. And the reality is that this is then storing up a time bomb in the NHS in terms of obesity, in terms of diabetes, in terms of heart attacks, in terms of strokes. So health inequality itself is a real problem for us. The OECD, of course, famously found that there was a relationship between inequality and growth, namely when there's less inequality. This is in a 2014 study over many countries over many years. Less inequality means higher growth and a bigger cake. And obviously people have referred also to health inequality, which again is linked to income inequality itself. And I look forward to that white paper. But we really need to be serious that we do need to feed our people in order to get a productive economy in the future, and a fair economy we can all be proud of. I'm from Wales, and I'm very pleased that the initiatives in Wales in providing universal free breakfasts, rolling out now to providing universal free lunches for all children, for all those adults who want to sign their children up, that will be free in Wales. So this is something that Henry Dimbleby, in this strategy that I very much welcome, has welcomed in the EFRA Committee on which I serve. When questioned about the issue about universal credit and levels of payment to make food affordable, of course, he said, well, that's a bit beyond my pay grade. But it isn't beyond the government's pay grade to realise that the issues about having affordable, nutritious food, and if children do have that affordable, nutritious food, it does mean that their performance is better, their life chances are better, the future tax revenues are better, the NHS costs are lower. So from the point of view of UK PLC, it makes a lot of sense, apart from being morally right. I spoke only this week with to an audience of student unions from across Wales online. And of course, this is one group, okay? I'm not saying they're the only group, but they particularly, of course, as you might expect, face high rents. They live in HMOs. The food costs are up, the energy costs up. Large proportions of, say, £10 a week maybe to live on after paying for these utilities. They can't afford their student materials for learning. Over 90% of them face mental health problems. And this is about a cost of living crisis, and they're also looking forward to an uncertain future in the jobs market and in terms of the mortgage market. So we need to think very carefully about that. And finally, I'd say in terms of food security, it is the case, of course, that Russia, since it invaded the Crimea, is now producing 15% more food. And we should think about our food security when the cost of fertiliser is up and we're reliant on too much. We should think about our home production. It should be organic. We need spatial planning. We need a proper plan where we end up with a situation where we don't have another wave of austerity costing 300,000 lives, but instead we focus on an opportunity to provide all our people with decent food, to provide a healthy, productive economy which is more equal and fairer for a stronger, greener future for all. But I fear that will only come with a Labour government.
Yeah.